What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to talk about sophomore wide receiver Darius Slayton. And yes, Cop Pizzle, if you're watching, I know it's your guy. But no, and all kidding aside, Darius Slayton is a guy I'm really excited about. If you go back, look at my videos maybe 2-3 months ago, I talked about how I think Darius Slayton fits this offense perfectly when I really did my research with the Jason Garrett-led offense. And I'm going to talk about some of the pros and some of the cons as to why you may or may not think that Darius Slayton is a breakout candidate this year for the New York Giants. And I certainly understand all the points. Darius Slayton out of Auburn was a guy that really was used to running almost strictly vertical routes for Auburn. That is what it called for. And that is why that is a positive for Slayton this year. I think this is a system that suits him better. Even though Darius Slayton had a fantastic rookie season last year, in 14 games he had 740 yards and 8 touchdowns. And if you go back and look at the stats last year, I think there was only 2 or 3 wide receivers who had 10 touchdowns or more, which blew me away. But Darius Slayton was among one of the league leaders in touchdowns and only played 14 games and only played 12 of which were with, obviously the quarterback, Daniel Jones, and they had instant chemistry right away, which goes to another pro, which Nate Burleson is going to go on to talk about when I pull up the audio clip. But him and Daniel Jones clearly have some chemistry. They were both rookies in the same year. He had multiple 2-touchdown games with Daniel Jones as his quarterback, and it should only help. So I think the system fits him better than any wide receiver in this offense. I think Golden Tate is a guy that traditionally does better in the slot. The same can be said for Sterling Shepard. Traditionally, the tight end does very well in this offense, along with wide receivers on the outside. Darius Slayton also possesses some height, which is what you're looking for when you're throwing footballs down the field. So I think his chemistry with Jones and the fact that he fits the scheme very well lends itself to the fact that I think Darius Slayton will have a very strong rookie season, second season with the New York Giants, and he may put up over 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns. We'll have to wait and see. Now, some people point to this as a negative. Some people point to this as a positive. But the fact of the matter is this. Last year, the Giants' weapons were down. So if you're looking at it from a negative standpoint, you could say, well, the Giants had to throw to Darius Slayton, right? Golden Tate was suspended for 4 games. Saquon Barkley wasn't himself. Evan Ingram missed a lot of the season. So Darius Slayton got more touches because of it, or more looks because of it. And that's fair to say. But by the same token, you could argue with a healthy Saquon Barkley, something that Slayton really didn't have and Jones didn't have for more than half the season, it should help Darius Slayton in the sense that it makes the offense less predictable, and the defense has to honor Saquon Barkley, giving Darius Slayton more efficient passing opportunities. And the same can be said with Evan Ingram in the lineup as well. So maybe he'll get less targets, but he'll probably have a easier opportunity to get open for big plays. So I think Darius Slayton is going to have more big plays this year if he could remain healthy, especially if the players around him can remain healthy, due to the fact that he will not be double teamed, and of the fact that I think this system will call for Daniel Jones taking more shots down the field. But I wanted to get into the audio clip from Nate Burleson talking about all of it and then giving my final opinion on everything that Burleson had to say.
Listen, I'm going to give you a guy right now. So Darius Slayton is an individual that we're not talking about enough. You know, there's a bunch of guys that you can see on that list if you go check it out that people mention when it comes to second-year breakout wide receivers. You know, there's individuals that are always in the news because they either make a lot of plays or their team is usually on TV during the weekend. But one guy that we didn't see enough of was this individual, Darius Slayton. And maybe it's because everybody was focused on Saquon. Maybe it's because the Giants weren't a good team last season. But if you look at his numbers, he was tied for the league lead among rookies with 8 TD catches. 8 TDs in your rookie season. Are you kidding me? I had a couple of them. If I had 8 TDs in my rookie year, I'm thinking I'm going to make the Hall of Fame. He was also 5th with 740 yards in just 14 games. So now imagine this. He comes back. He plays a full slate of games. And also, he gets help from guys that were banged up last year. Remember, Golden Tate under suspension, so he didn't come in later in the year, and he came back banged up. Sterling Shepard was a little banged up. And another thing I want you to keep in mind, Daniel Jones didn't have a traditional offseason this year. So the one thing he's going to remember from last year was the one dude that always came down with the ball when he threw it to him, and that's Darius Slayton. I guarantee that he has an even better year, and you will say his name more often after this year.
It's one of the 5 guys on your list from a fantasy perspective. You know I love numbers. You mentioned his, and they were great. He's going outside the top 40, but ahead of guys like Deebo Samuel, who's injured to start the year, Jamison Crowder, and Emmanuel Sanders, who's now in a high-powered Saints offense. I think it's interesting. Clearly, they have chemistry, right? It was Jones to Slayton. What do you think, Nate?
Yep.
How much do you think it helped that Daniel Jones clearly didn't start the season as a starter last year, that he got to hang out with him in second team in camp. Like, is there something to that?
Yeah, well, there's a certain chemistry that you have, whether it's on the field or even off the field,
Yeah.
being young guys coming in, understanding that you're going through this journey together, and the simple fact that the two guys in front of them were banged up, which means they had to lean on each other.
So there you have it. There's Nate Burleson's take on the second-year wide receiver out of Auburn, Darius Slayton, and I agree with a lot of his points. And, as I've talked about in the past, it's nice to hear somebody in the mainstream media is backing up the New York Giants, and it seems like Burleson is first in line. And like I said, maybe he's on the New York Giants payroll. But regardless, I do agree with a lot of the things that he had to say. Now, for those of you that worry about Darius Slayton in year two, I think that those are legitimate things to worry about. The fact that defenses have a book on him, they'll pay more attention to him, and the fact that Daniel Jones is learning a new playbook, so it's almost like a new offense. But I thought that Nate brought up a really good point. The fact that Daniel Jones has all these things to deal with, you would think he's going to look to the guy that he had the best chemistry with in his rookie year to bail him out of a lot of situations. And it's undoubtedly Darius Slayton. They came in together as rookies. They worked together on the second team in training camp. And then, of course, when they got the opportunity to play with each other in Tampa Bay, they flourished from that point forward. And I expect that to be the case even more so this year. I'd be surprised this year if Darius Slayton doesn't have at least 800, 850 yards and a minimum of the 8 touchdowns that he had last year. I think he's going to have a big year for the Giants. I think he's going to have a lot of big plays, and I expect his yards per catch, which I've talked about in the past as well, in this offense to really take off. You take a look at over the course of history, the Dallas Cowboys traditionally, in a Jason Garrett-led offense, have been near the league leaders at the wide receiver positions in yards per catch, and a guy like Slayton, who averaged like 20 yards per catch, I think his last year at Auburn, should really benefit from that. So that is another contributing factor. So I just wanted to go over some of the things that Burleson said, get some positive stuff up on the page. And if you guys liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop the comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.